Olivia Kamat ng Malaya, Toronto. Malaya, Toronto is a member of Malaya Movement in Canada. Malaya Canada is a movement of Filipino compatriots that seeks to broaden support for the cause of freedom, justice, and genuine democracy in the Philippines. If you want to know more about our movement, please visit our webpage, Malaya Movement Canada, or if you want to visit Malaya Movement in Toronto, please visit our Facebook page at Malaya Movement Toronto. Earl?
Yes, Tita Livia. Salamat sa pagsama sa akin dito sa unang webinar natin. At syempre, maraming salamat din sa ating mga kababayan dito sa Canada sa pagsubaybay sa ating webinar ngayong gabi. At bago tayo magsimula, ilan lamang pong mga paalala sa ating mga house rules for this webinar. Okay, una sa ating house rules ay panatilihin pong naka-off ang inyong mga audio sa buong panahon ng programa. Pangalawa, kung maaari din po ay naka-off ang inyong mga camera para hindi maka-apekto sa ating Zoom bandwidth. Pangatlo, mananatiling naka-on po ang mga camera ng audio ng ating mga guest at mga hosts. At pang-apat, sa mga tanong po ninyo, isulat lamang sa ating chat box at ipapaabot ito sa ating mga hosts at para sagutin ang ating guests. Sa huling bahagi ng ating programa ay magkakaroon din po tayo ng photo op. Kung maaari po ay buksan natin ang ating mga camera sa huli. At salamat po.
Salamat, Earl. Malaking karangalan ang makatulong sa pagmumulat sa ating mga kababayan, lalo na sa panahong ito na napaka-kritikal ang pagboboto. Naniniwala akong malaki ang maitutulong ng ating mga organisasyon para imulat at bigyan ng tamang impormasyon ang ating mga kababayan hinggil sa mga issue na hinaharap ng ating bayang Pilipinas ngayong nalalapit na eleksyon. Salamat at mabuhay sa mga successful caravans of hope na ginawa all over Canada kahapon, November 14, dito sa Toronto, sa Vancouver, sa Edmonton, sa Montreal, sa Winnipeg. At marami pa pong ibang mangyayaring mga caravans of hope all over Canada. Dito po sa Mississauga, we are planning one on Sunday, December 5 for Mississauga and all cities west of the GTA po. Pinapaalam lang namin sa inyo ngayon pa man para makapaghanda na kayo para sa caravan na ito. Lahat po yung mga tiga Burlington, Hamilton, Guelph, Georgetown, hanggang Niagara Falls, kung pwede.
Yes, Tita. Mukhang exciting yung next caravan natin on December 5th, right?
Yeah. Right. Oo.
Well, sa ating programa ngayong gabi, tatalakayin natin ang sa tulong ng ating panauhin ang mga tanong. Ano-ano nga ba ang isyong dapat tinututukan ng ating mga kababayan sa pagpili ng mga pinuno? Ano-ano ang mga hamon, pagkakataon at mithiin sa Halalan 2022?
Pero bago po tayo magsimula at bilang pambungad na pagbubukas ng ating programa, hayaan ninyong basahin ko muna ang land acknowledgement o pagkilala sa lupain ng mga katutubo dito sa Canada bilang pagbibigay galang sa lupain atin ngayong kinabibilangan dito sa Canada. Inglesin ko na po ito. The City of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The city also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Earl?
Maraming salamat, Tita Livy. Kagaya po ng sinabi ni Tita, ako rin po ay nagagalak na maging bahagi ng pagsisikap ng ating lahat ng pagsisilbahan ng ating bayan, kahit man lamang sa ganitong paraan. Kaya welcome po tayo. Tuloy tayo sa ating talakayan at halina po at makibahagi sa ating usapang mahalaga sa mga isyung napapanahon, sa mga pananaw na maglilinaw para sa kapakanan ng ating bayan.
So bago ko po ipakilala ang ating butihing panauhin ngayong gabi, panoorin niyo po itong short video clip about our guest speaker, courtesy po of Rappler.
I am both the father and the son of a Pepe. Si Pepe ay isang vital cog sa aming team. Siya nga ang pumili ng aming color, teal. Si Pepe ang aming direct sa team. Siya ang nagdi-direct ng mga campaign ads namin. It's quite an experience na siya ang nag-uutos sa akin instead of the other way around. Well, nauna akong natuto ng Aikido nung ako'y nag-aaral ng law sa US. Kaya nung umuwi ako, naghanap din ako ng Aikido dito. Ang aking teacher sa Aikido, Sensei Ernie Talag. Aikido is a form of self-defense that is non-violent. Tinuruan din niya kami ng konting arnis, konting defensa sa paggamit ng mga kutsilyo at iba't ibang mga weapons. So we have learned disarmament of various weapons as well as the use of different weapons, even ordinary things as use for self-defense. I like jazz, I like some pop music, I like reggae. Sabi natawa nga yung anak ko nung binuksan niya yung cellphone ko dahil sabi niya ang pinakamaraming data na ginagamit ko ay para sa mga songs. Yan ang pang-relax ko. Unique din yung aking buhay. Ako'y lumaki sa ilalim ng martial law. Tapos na-experience ko rin ang EDSA. At ang aking ama naman ay kakaiba rin siya. Siya ay isang human rights lawyer. Noong panahon na pag sinabi mong human rights ay ang trato ng pamahalaan sa iyo ay parang criminal ka na rin, parang enemy of the state. Wala naman pinamana sa inyong magulang na balwarte o makinarya o political dynasty. Totoo naman yon. Pero ang ipinamana naman nila sa akin ay pagmamahal sa inang bayan, paggalang sa dignidad ng tao, at pagmamalasakit sa kapwa. O yung aking pinakamalaking fear ay babalik tayo sa panahon ng martial law. Wala ang ating mga kalayaan na hindi na makakapagsalita ang taong bayan. Kahit anong gawin natin ay pwede tayong ikulong. I dream of a country where we have justice. I dream of a country where we have accountability, yung sinasabi natin na pananagutan. I dream of a place, a nation, where our children can safely walk around, where they can believe in their government really as a government that is for them rather than that they have to serve the government, and where they can be assured that justice will be rendered no matter what.
Okay. Jose Manuel Diokno is the founding dean of the De La Salle University College of Law and chair of the Free Legal Assistance Group. He has been practicing law for 30 years and gained prominence as a human rights lawyer and litigator. The DLSU College of Law, which opened in 2010, is the first law school in the Philippines to highlight human rights and legal aid as part of its educational program, while the Free Legal Assistance Group is the oldest organization of human rights lawyers in the Philippines, known for handling cases involving civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. Though already well known in legal and human rights circles, Dean Chel gained wider public prominence when he ran on a platform of justice and judicial reform during the 2019 senatorial elections. He emerged as one of the leading opposition senatorial candidates, largely because of his connection with young voters who made sure he consistently topped nearly all pre-election polls and surveys in schools and universities all over the country. Though he actually has no grandchildren yet, these young Filipinos adopted Dean Chel as their woke lolo during the campaign because of his progressive stance on issues, his advocacy for youth empowerment, and his witty remarks, despite the occasional dad joke. Even with the elections over, Dean Chel continues to engage with his children by serving as speaker for various events for numerous schools and organizations all over the country with speaking engagements, serving as a venue for continuing his advocacy for justice, human rights, and empowering the youth. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic and in line with his belief that justice should be accessible to every Filipino, Atty Chel set up a free legal help desk on his Facebook page, www.facebook.com/Chel Diokno. Sa unang 3 buwan pa lang, libo-libong Pilipino na ang nakinabang sa hatid na tulong ni Atty Chel. Nagagalak po akong ipakilala sa inyo ngayong gabi ang ating butihing panauhin. Walang iba po kundi si Atty Chel Diokno. Welcome po, Atty Chel Diokno.
Welcome, Atty Chel.
Maraming salamat po at magandang gabi sa inyo. It's morning here but I understand it's evening there.
Right.
Attorney Earl Dakara, the chairperson of Kabayans for Leni, the Malaya Movement Canada, represented by Livy Camacho and Louis Kiano, Eri Maestro of Isang Bayan Canada, the UP alumni from Ontario, represented by Agnes Manasan, and all the members and volunteers who are with us today. Maraming salamat sa inyong paanyaya at talagang nananaba ang puso ko sa mga lahat ng volunteers natin. Alam nyo, the volunteers will really be crucial to this campaign. Kayo ang puso at kaluluwa nitong kampanya. And the road to victory of Leni Robredo, of Kiko Pangilinan, and all the senatorial aspirants in their slate really goes through the volunteers. Kaya lubos ang pasasalamat ko sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Atty Chel Diokno, isang guro, isang ama, isang abogado. 30 taon na pong nagbibigay ng libreng serbisyong legal sa mga nangangailangan at chairperson ng FLAG or Free Legal Assistance Group. Pero may nakakakilala sa akin hindi dahil sa track record ko, kundi dahil sa ngipin ko. Kasi tuwing pinag-uusapan natin yung mga issue ng ating bayan, issue ng pagkain, issue ng trabaho, issue ng kalayaan at katarungan, pinupunan nila yung ngipin ko. Well, actually, okay lang naman sa akin yon. I don't mind. Maliit lang naman na bagay yan. Pero kung pag-uusapan nila yan, hindi kaya dapat pag-usapan din nila yung malalaking bungi at yung nabubulok sa ating minamahal na Pilipinas, lalong-lalo na sa ating pamahalaan. Sa mga nakaraang taon, marami talaga mga Pilipino ang sumagot sa hamon ng pandemya. We have our medical frontliners na pati buhay nila ay itinaya para sa ating lahat. We have our economic frontliners, ang ating mga mangingisda, ang ating magsasaka, mga transporter na sinigurong aabot pa rin sa atin ang pagkain sa lamesa kahit na naka-lockdown tayo dito sa Pilipinas. Nandyan yung ating mga kabataan at mga ordinaryong mga mamamayan na sa sariling initiative ay tumutulong sa mga frontliners, sa mga nagugutom, sa mga nawalan ng trabaho at pati sa mga negosyo na bumagsak. Napakarami talaga mga Pilipino ang sumagot sa hamon ng pandemya. Pero alam po ninyo, meron isang sektor na tila parang pumalya. Parang may isang sektor na kahit nasa kanila yung budget, nasa kanila yung resources, nasa kanila yung kapangyarihan, ay hindi naramdaman ng ordinaryong Pilipino yung kanilang tulong. Nakakalungkot man sabihin dahil sila nga dapat ang primerong tumutulong sa atin. Kaya lang ay parang may malaking bungi doon sa kanilang kapangyarihan. Kasi imbes na gamitin nila ang kanilang puwersa, ang kanilang budget, ang kanilang resources at pera ng bayan para sa ating lahat, lalong-lalo na sa mga nasa laylayan ng ating lipunan, ay tila parang ginagamit nila ito para sa mga overpriced na medical supplies at kung saan-saan pa. At palagay ko, kaya rin kayo ay nandito dahil tama na dapat yan. Sobra na dapat yan. Kailangan paalitan na natin yan. Alam po ninyo, marami tayong kailangan ituwid na mga injustisya dito sa ilalim ng pandemya. Nandiyan yung mga frontliners natin na tinuturing natin ng mga bagong bayani. Pero hanggang ngayon, marami pa rin sa kanila ay hindi nakakatanggap ng mga benepisyo na nakatakda mismo sa ating batas. Nandiyan yung mga MSMEs natin na naghihikahos na at marami na rin ang bumagsak dahil wala silang natanggap na fiscal stimulus o financial support sa ating pamahalaan. At hindi lang naman sila ang natatamaan dahil our MSMEs employ around 64% of our workforce. So pag bumagsak ang MSME, ang talagang naapektuhan ay ang mga manggagawa at kanilang mga pamilya. Nandyan din yung ating mga estudyante na hirap sa online learning at yung iba ay hindi man lang maka-access sa internet dahil walang kakayahan. At nandyan din yung ating mga kapatid na mga ordinaryong mga mamamayan na hirap, hindi makakuha ng sapat na pagkain at walang kinikita. Kaya tingin ko, kailangan natin ang isang lalaban para sa katarungan sa ating minamahal na inang bayan. Alam niyo, hindi lang naman yon ang problema natin sa Pilipinas dahil mismo yung issue ng hustisya ay talagang malaki ang pagkukulang. Pag sinabi natin justice for all, nako, pag nakausap natin yung mga kapatid natin sa mga lalawigan, ang sagot nila sa akin ay, attorney, paano naman kung hindi ba dapat justice for all? Bakit dito sa atin parang doble kara ang hustisya? Pag ikaw ay ordinaryong mamamayan ay hirap na hirap makakamit ng hustisya, pero kung ikaw naman ay malaking tao, agad-agad ay meron kang katarungan. Kaya tingin ko, hindi lang yung mga inhustisya na nangyayari sa pandemya ang dapat natin ituwid, pati yung mismong sistema ng hustisya natin na hindi nagsisilbi, hindi nagdadala ng katarungan sa lahat, lalong-lalo na sa mga walang boses at mga nasa laylayan ng ating lipunan. I believe we need to strengthen our justice system. We need to support and empower our barangay justice system, yung tinatawag na katarungan pambarangay. We also need to make sure that we speed up justice. Kasi alam naman po natin that justice delayed is justice denied. And yet, alam niyo po sa atin, it's not isolated. It's very common that we have cases that last 10, 20, or even 30 years. Kaya palagay ko, panahon na talagang bigyan natin ng prioridad ang pag-aayos natin sa hustisya. Dahil ang aking pananaw, yan ang pinakamalaking hadlang sa pag-unlad ng bayan. We cannot ever address corruption effectively. We cannot ever dismantle these terrible criminal syndicates of drugs, smuggling, and so on, unless and until we strengthen our justice system. Simple lang naman ang pangarap natin mga Pilipino. All we want really is sapat na pagkain sa ating lamesa, maayos at disenteng trabaho, at masaganang buhay. Pero para mangyari yan, kailangan may pananagutan. Kailangan yung mga nakaupo sa mga pwesto ay tatanggapin yung kanilang responsibilidad. At para mangyari yan, dapat may kagat ang hustisya. Kailangan may ngipin ang batas. At ako po ay handang-handang manilbi at maging ngipin ng batas para sa mga walang boses at para sa mga nagiging biktima ng pang-aabuso at para maiangat natin ang buhay ng lahat ng mga Pilipino. Kaya ulit ako ay nagpapasalamat sa Kabayan for Leni, sa Malaya Movement Canada, sa Isang Bayan Canada, UP alumni from Ontario, and everyone else who is here and who is participating in making sure that we have a clean, honest, and fair elections in 2022 and that we elect servant leaders for our national leadership. Palagay ko sawa na tayo sa mga tradisyonal na mga leader na sarili lang ang iniisip, sariling kapangyarihan lang ay sinusulong. Talagang panahon na magkaroon tayo ng ibang klaseng liderato. Yung liderato na nagmamahal sa inang bayan, yung liderato na gagawin ang lahat para ma-empower at matulungan ang ating mga kapatid na nahihirapan at nangangailangan. So thank you. I hope you have a good evening. And I hope that I will get to meet you face-to-face at some time in the future. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Atty Chel Diokno. That was a very inspiring and very meaningful presentation po. Pero bago tayo tumungo sa ating question and answer, ay atin munang panoorin ang isang kulturang pagtatanghal na ihatid sa atin ni Raul Sunico. Panoorin po natin muna ito.
Wow, wasn't that amazing? Si Raul Sunico. I hope nagustuhan po ninyo, Chel Diokno. National
Yes,
artist.
wonderful.
Ang galing. Okay, we're ready to start our question and answer period, and they're coming fast and furious. We have the first one. We have the first question for you, Attorney Chel, and it's coming from Jorge Ricky Caluen from Toronto. Attorney Diokno, since the justice system is top priority to you, do you already have a specific piece of legislation you would like to introduce within the first 100 days of the new Congress? Something you deem would meet approval by senators from both sides of the aisle?
Thank you for that question. I actually have several proposals that I would like to push as soon as if ever I am elected. The first would have to do with the management of the pandemic and what I like to call pandemic injustice. I really believe we need to revamp the task force that is managing the pandemic, or what we call the IATF. The IATF is a creation of an executive order of former President Pinoy, but it is not the way it is being used under this administration. It's not science and technology driven, and it's not evidence based. And I would like to propose a law that will set the composition of the IATF to include the DOST, because right now it's not a member, and also to include the private sector in the task force. Dapat may representation ng ating private sector doon. Also, I would like to put a provision there that would require that the management of any pandemic, especially something like the coronavirus, must be based on science and technology and must be evidence-driven. What do I mean by that? It's so sad that after 2 years, we still do not have a systematic database or contact tracing system. Other countries managed to put that up very quickly after the pandemic started. Bakit tayo 2 taon na wala pa rin tayong ganon? The reason is because our task force is not science and technology driven. Simple bagay lang yan eh. If we gave that directive to our scientists and our IT people and we gave them the power to do that, we would already have it up and running by now. Another is something even simpler than that, telemedicine. If our government had begun that program at the start of the pandemic and offered it to our citizenry, especially those who could not afford, then they could immediately have access to doctors and medical specialists without having to travel and without having to risk any kind of infection. So there is so much we need to do in terms of management of the pandemic that can be addressed by legislation like that. I would also like to include a provision in that law that will require that all violators of quarantine rules should only be punished with community service. You know, right now, based on a press conference by the chief of the PNP himself, he admitted that more than 500,000 Filipinos, I will repeat that, 500,000 Filipinos were arrested and jailed for simple quarantine violations like curfew, etc. And they were treated as criminals under the criminal justice system. I monitored one case where a father, lumabas lang siya ng bahay niya dahil gutom ang mga anak niya, hindi niya namalayan, curfew na pala, nahuli siya, nakulong siya ng 37 days bago siya nakabalik sa kanyang pamilya. More than 1 month. Bakit? Wala siyang pampiyansa, wala siyang pambayad ng bail, wala siyang access sa lawyer, hindi alam ng pamilya kung saan siya dinala. So it took that long. Hindi na po makatao yan at hindi makatarungan yan. Any kind of a management of a pandemic must always respect our basic right to health and our basic right to dignity. And I would like to make that part of the law that will create the body that will manage the pandemic. Second, as far as the justice system generally is concerned, I am really pushing for a law that will remove business cases from the courts and bring it to arbitration. Meron na po tayong precedent dyan. For many years, our construction industry has not, when they have cases, they do not go to court. Kahit milyon-milyon, 100 million, kahit billion ang pinag-uusapan, hindi nila dinadala sa korte ang kaso nila. Ina-arbitrate po nila. Why is arbitration better? I have handled several cases in the construction industry. Number one, it's much faster. The case I handled in 1 year, natapos namin lahat. It involved more than 100 million pesos, and yet we were able to finish it to the satisfaction of both parties within a year. And number two, walang issue ng corruption. Kasi po yung problema sa ating justice system, pag nakita ng judge natin na pera-pera lang ang pinag-uusapan, nagiging malaking temptation for corruption yon. So kung maidala natin yan sa arbitration, ay wala nang source of corruption yung ating mga judge. Pangatlo ay pag mabawasan natin, pag maalis natin sa courts yung mga business cases at madala natin sa arbitration, our courts will now be free to address the other cases affecting ordinary Filipinos. They will now have the time to handle these other cases quickly and to resolve them as quickly as possible, because justice delayed is really justice denied. Marami po akong ibang proposals, but I just to save time, I will just focus on those two for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Earl, do you have a question that you'd like to
Yes,
ask?
Tita Levy. Actually, we are receiving a lot of questions, Atty Chel. Sana matanong natin ito at ma-address ni Atty Chel to. Excited yung mga viewers natin. This question is coming from Migrante, BC. Okay, the question is, what is your take on media and other people calling other candidates leftist? Are you also called leftist because you also campaign for justice for all, for respect for human rights, for violations? You stand for anti-corruption and national sovereignty, for honest elections? Or is the leftist term a badge of honor?
Well, I've been called many things in the last couple of years. All sorts of insults have been thrown at me. Sa akin, okay lang naman yun. That's part of putting yourself in the public eye. But you know, what I'm really so concerned with is how divisive our society has become. Because of it has almost become it has become so common for some quarters in our society to red tag and to call others, tatawagin nilang dilawan yan, tatawagin nilang pulahan yan, kung ano-ano pang mga pangalan. And it's very concerning because our young people are not learning the right values, they're not learning the right way of conducting themselves. From our generation, nakakalungkot man sabihin, itong mga nanre-red tag at name calling ay karamihan ay nanggagaling sa atin, I mean sa ating age bracket. And it's very sad that that is happening, because what we really need, especially in a pandemic, is inclusiveness. One of the very inspiring hashtags that came out of the pandemic, it came from our young people. The hashtag of no student left behind. Talagang gustong-gusto ko yung hashtag na yan. It's organic, nanggaling sa kanila yon. And then I realized that dapat palawakin pa natin yan. Dapat ang ating panawagan sa buong mundo ay walang may iwanang Pilipino kahit nasa pandemya tayo. We have to combat the divisiveness in our country with inclusiveness, with solidarity, and with unity. Kaya ako, that's going to be one of the undercurrents of this campaign, the call for inclusiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Atty Chel.
Thank you. I have a question. Actually, we asked for people to send in their questions even before so that we could, try and get. Now, so many people ask this question, so it will be two-pronged. One is actually coming from Dan Umshang and Guy Camacho, and it is asking about, there's this opportunity that Ferdinand Marcos Jr. may be disqualified because of his case. This is an example of corruption of the justice system, because he was able to run for 7 elections without the case coming out somehow. So there must have been something that happened there between the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. Why did it take so long at ngayon lang lumabas? And tied up with that po, since we're talking about the political landscape, this is a question from Marisa Corpus, who, by the way, is our spokesperson for Malaya, and she's joining us tonight. We'd like to acknowledge her presence. Thank you, Marisa. And she's asking about the substitution clause, which is making a mockery of our electoral process. So, parang unconscionable, unconscionable na ngayon lang lumabas itong kaso ni Ferdinand Marcos Jr. po.
Well, thank you for those two questions. First, with respect to the case of Bongbong Marcos, I really don't know how it was kept quiet that long. Obviously, may talagang nangyari dyan na pinatahimik lang nila at they took all possible steps to really keep a lid on it for all these years. I'm just happy that it did come out. Sabi nga nila, the truth will always come out kahit na ano pang gawin nila. And I am hoping that we will get a just resolution. Pero ito lang po ang problema. There's an underlying problem here. And that is the fact that the president, whoever the president is, has so much appointive power. For example, our president appoints all the judges and all the justices up to the Supreme Court. Our president appoints all the prosecutors. Our president appoints all the executive high officials, and also the Commission on Elections, among other agencies, even those that are supposed to be constitutionally autonomous and independent. And the case that has been filed against Marcos is now pending in the Commission on Elections. We know that many of those were appointed by President Duterte, and though the few who were not appointed by President Duterte, their terms are about to expire, meaning that before elections, he will have a chance to appoint everyone, all the commissioners to the COMELEC. And that's a big concern because they are supposed to be independent, they're supposed to be impartial, but you know how it is, yung feeling na utang na loob ay malakas pa rin sa iba't ibang mga opisyal natin. So that is, to me, the biggest concern. Because even if that case is resolved by COMELEC, malamang kung sino man na matalo dyan ay aakyat naman sa higher courts. And ultimately, aabot din malamang yan sa Supreme Court. And again, we have a similar issue there because so many of the members of that court were appointed as well by either this president or by President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, among others. So to me, in the long term, that is one issue that we must confront and address and resolve. That it would seem to me that there is too much appointive power without any kind of screening or safeguards that we have in our legal framework. Insofar as the issues of substitution are concerned, just like you, ako ay talagang nababahala dyan sa nangyayari. Dahil obvious naman na inaabuso nila yung nasa batas natin. Substitution was really never intended to do what they have been doing with it. Kaya lang, it would require congressional amendment. Kaya sa akin, who we elect to Congress and to the Senate is going to be so crucial if we want to revise this and come up with a fairer and freer type of electoral process. Marami pa po dapat tayong ayusin pagdating sa ating election laws. For example, this was my experience in 2019. Dehadong-dehado ang mga kandidatong walang pera. One of the biggest mechanisms for raising awareness and converting voters is really through television ads. Kaya lang, ang mamahal, grabe, sobrang mahal ng television ads. Kung ang kandidato ay may hundreds of millions, kayang-kaya niyang gumastos para sa ads. Pero yung mga kandidato tulad ko at ibang mga progresibong kandidato na talagang hirap naman mag-raise ng ganong karaming pera, we were not able to run the ads that we needed to run to really reach the large part of our population. So I think we should also revisit that and make sure that there's a level playing field when it comes to elections, because that is the heart and soul of our democracy. And we must never allow people like that or trapos to abuse it and make a mockery of it. Thank you.
Talagang nakakamangha, Atty Chel, yung mga nangyayari ngayon. Kahit kami dito sa Canada, nababalitaan natin yung napakabilis magpalitan ng mga ng posisyon. Right? Kung ikaw ay tatakbo, dapat sa una pa lang ipakita mo na kaagad siguro kung talagang totoo ka dun sa purpose mo. Meron ho tayong question, Atty Chel, from Rick Falco from Mississauga, Ontario. Ang sabi niya is, so many people were killed by riding in tandem. Why none of these killers were arrested or even brought near to justice? If you survive this killing, or if you are the parents of the victim, where do you go to get justice?
Yun na nga po alam nyo, yun ang isang sobrang nakakalungkot na pangyayari dito sa atin. Yung libo-libong napatay na hanggang ngayon ay wala pa rin hustisya. We don't have an exact number because the government stopped releasing the data after a year and a half. But I can tell you this is based on a Supreme Court resolution from July 2016 up to November 2017. So that is only a period of around 17 months. According to an accomplishment report of the Office of the President, 20,322 Filipinos were killed in the government's war on drugs. Marami doon, I think around 5,000 to 6,000 were killed either by riding, no actually, around 15,000 were killed by vigilantes or riding in tandem, and around 5,000 plus were killed in police custody or under police during a police operation. And there has been very, very few. I only know of a handful of cases that have been filed against any of the perpetrators. Because there are so many families who are still seeking justice and they have nowhere to go. Halimbawa, pag sila ay pumunta sa any government office, you can expect that they will not get the kind of attention they deserve. Pag sila naman ay lumalapit sa amin, I am the chair of the Free Legal Assistance Group, ang una nilang tanong sa amin ay, attorney, kung magfa-file ba kami ng case, anong assurance, anong guarantee na hindi naman kami hahabulin at hindi papatayin yung asawa ko, yung anak ko, yung ibang kapamilya namin. And of course, we have no way of guaranteeing or protecting them. So wala naman sa konsyensya ko na sabihin ko sa kanila, magsampa kayo ng kaso na alam kong baka o malamang na may mangyayari din sa ibang member ng kanilang pamilya. So what we have been doing, the most we can do is document their cases as fully as possible to wait for that proper time. Kasi mahaba naman ang prescriptive period, to wait for the time that the political environment is better, and it's safer for them, that we can go after these people and put them in jail and make sure they are punished. Kaya rin mahalaga po kung sino ang mahahalal sa darating na eleksyon, dahil kung sila-sila rin ang mananalo dyan, talagang walang mangyayaring pananagutan. It's only if we have a progressive administration that justice can be delivered to the so many victims of EJ case.
Yes.
Thank you.
Follow-up question po, Atty Chel. Meron po tayong House Bill, I think it's 240, the Human Rights Defender Bill. I think it was passed already to the Committee on Human Rights sa lower house. Ano po ba ang inyong pananaw bilang isang human rights lawyer at tumatakbong senador para sa kaalaman ng ating mga botante kung ito ay magiging tunay na batas? Ano ho ba ang advocacy ninyo dito?
Full support po tayo sa Human Rights Defenders Bill. At in fact, ang isa sa, I think yung nauna talagang nagsulong po niyan ay si Sen. Laila de Lima. And we fully support her efforts and all the efforts of progressive legislators to pass the Human Rights Defenders Bill. Kailangan ng proteksyon ng ating mga lumalaban para sa ating mga karapatang pantao. Actually, we have more than marami-rami na rin po ang mga napatay na human rights defenders and even environmental defenders. Last year, I think we were #1 in the world in terms of environmental defenders who were attacked or killed because they were fighting for our environment. And the same, we also have a big number as far as human rights defenders are concerned. Kaya kailangan na natin ng isang batas na nagbibigay sa kanila ng protection. Thank you.
Italy.
Hi, yeah, I have one here from, I'll just ask this one after the other. I have one here from Rick Falco of Mississauga. Whoever controls the COMELEC will win the election for sure. How can you and Leni safeguard that this will not happen in the 2022 election? And there is another one here from Ria, our tech person. Sa kabila ng mga ataking pinupukol sa inyo ng kasalukuyang estado, ano ang inspirasyon ninyo sa pagpapatuloy sa paglaban sa karapatan ng mamamayang Pilipino? And the one from Lynn, Lynn is from Kingston, and she's asking dito, will they open the case of Acierto and Las Cañas and Matobato regarding Duterte's death squad once Leni wins?
Let me address these questions. Thank you for them one by one. Well, while that may be true from a purely intellectual mindset that whoever controls COMELEC will make sure that their bets win, we have in our history seen that it doesn't happen all the time. For example, nung panahon ni Marcos na snap elections nung nanalo po si Cory, si Tita Cory, ay hawak niya lahat. Hindi lang niya hawak ang COMELEC. It was a dictatorship. And yet we prevailed. And while COMELEC does have so much power and influence over the outcome of the elections, there are things that they cannot control. For example, kahit na imanipula nila yung mga electronically transmitted votes, if we are properly organized and we have the right number of watchers and people on the ground, we can always counter-check the numbers, and we can address if there will be wholesale cheating. Mahalata po yun eh. It will be very obvious, and there are mechanisms that we can use to challenge that. Ultimately, it's going to be a question of the people's will, and just like what happened in EDSA in 1986, when it was obvious that Marcos was going to cheat us out of that election, mismo na ang taong bayan ang tumayo at nanindigan para sa ating demokrasya. And I truly believe that remains in our DNA up to today, and that if ever we reach that point, we will be ready and willing to fight for our democracy. Second question, ano yung ang aking inspirasyon sa kabila ng mga bashing at lahat-lahat na yun? Well, #1 po kayo, mga volunteers, kasi nakikita ko talaga na this is going to be a very organic campaign. And without you, we will not prevail. That's why it's so important. All of you are so important in this campaign. Second inspiration I draw is from our youth. Because in the last 2 years, I have engaged with our youth on an almost daily basis. And they have a certain kind of energy, dedication, determination, drive, and idealism that is very contagious. Sa aking pakikipag-usap sa kanila at mga pakikipaghalubilo sa kanila, ang dami-dami kong nakukuhang energy. They really are there for the country. And I have, in the last 2 years, really engaged with so many of them from different parts of the country, all the way up to Zamboanga, parts of Luzon and Visayas. And they are ready to move. Kaya ako talagang doon ko nakukuha yung energy ko. Third, mabubuksan po ba yung mga kaso ni Las Cañas at Acierto pagka magbago ang administrasyon? If Vice President Leni does win, and I really, really, really hope she will, then I think we will have accountability. The steps will be taken to make sure there is accountability. And of course, that would include looking into the revelations of Las Cañas and Asierto. Thank you.
Earl?
Okay, thank you, Atty Chel. Marami, dumadami yung mga questions natin. Sana mapagbigyan natin ito. First question, Atty Chel. What is your message to the Filipino people in the event of the anniversary of Marcos burial at dalibingan ng mga bayani? How do you encourage young voters to ensure that they understand the issue behind this Marcos burial? And another question from Eri Masestro of One Sambayan, Canada chapter. What is your honest opinion on the Marcos Jr. and Sara Duterte tandem? And the last one is from the Team Penaroyo. Sir Chel, ano ba ang masasabi nyo sa present settings ng party list system natin? Totoo bang inaabuso na din ng mga politiko ito? Are you in favor of abolishing it?
Thank you. Well, my message to our people with respect to the burial of Marcos at dalibingan ng mga bayani is never again and never forget. And it's very important that we continue to push this, especially to our youth. Kasi alam nyo, mula pa ng mga year 2000s, there was a very clear, deliberate effort to rewrite history. That's when we began to notice that these very slick, expensive videos on YouTube started coming out, and they have not stopped since. Talagang gumastos sila ng milyones para baguhin ang ating saysayan. Unfortunately, since many of our young people were really digital natives, ay yung iba ay talaga nadala dun sa mga video na yon. Kaya kailangan mag-push back tayo. Whatever efforts they have undertaken to change history, we must now redouble to correct that and to really bring out the truth to our people. Second, as far as the BBM-Sara tandem is concerned, well, mabuti na nga, nagkaalaman na at the lines are drawn. And now it's going to be the people's choice and the people's will kung sino ba ang gusto nila. We have two starkly contrasting forms of leadership here. You have a servant leader, Leni Robredo, who is clearly has no personal agenda, who's there only to empower others, not herself, who has no intention at all of making any money from serving in government. And then you have the trapos, the traditional politicians. At I don't have to say anything more about them. Alam nyo na yung kanilang mga values at kanilang mga gawain. So this is going to be an election for the ages. Iba-ibang klase talaga itong darating na halalan. To me, the closest I can think of in our history would be the snap elections of prior to the EDSA revolution. This is going to be a fight of our lives. It's not just going to be an ordinary election. Our very values are at stake. Our democracy is at stake in 2022. Pagdating naman po sa party list system, ako, isa pa yan na talagang inabuso. At hindi naman, tingin ko naman, hindi naman po kailangan i-abolish, kundi ayusin ang batas. Iklaro natin na ang party list ay dapat talaga para sa mga sektor na walang boses at para sila'y magkaroon ng representasyon sa ating lower house. I hope we can do that if ever sufficient numbers of progressive candidates are elected. Thank you.
Attorney Chel, before we proceed, how much longer can we keep you? Marami.
Pwede pa naman. I can stay for maybe around 15 minutes or so.
Oh, good, good. Naku, thank you so much. Kasi marami pong tanong dito, and I know that people feel very strongly about the questions they're asking. This one is directed to you from Leni. Ano po ang gagawin ninyo once elected about accountability of the politicians and government officials who misused the taxpayers' money? I think she's referring to all these Farmally and these graft and corruption cases. How come nobody except during Pinoy's term ang nakukulong? And then of course, his name in the thing is Galaxy, but I think his name is really Romy, and I think he's calling from Kingston. He was just expressing a hope that the government would be more responsive to the needs of the poor and the needy, more transparent and accountable, and in line with the servant leadership as exemplified by Leni. So if you would like to address itong mga questions na ito po.
Thank you for the questions. Actually, matagal na dapat tayo nagkaroon ng pananagutan sa ating bansa. Yun lang, it's the politicians who don't want to talk about accountability in our country. They don't even mention justice as one of the institutions that must be strengthened. And when I thought about it, I realized that sadya po yun. They don't want to talk about justice and accountability because they're afraid of being held accountable. They don't want to talk about justice because justice is empowerment. When you recognize the rights of a worker, of an indigenous person, of a person with disability, you are empowering that person. These trapos, ayaw po nila yan. Kasi pag empowered ang electorate, ay hindi na sila ihahalal ulit. Kaya tingin ko tayo na dapat ang mag-push para magkaroon ng pananagutan. The opposition is determined to ensure accountability if we are elected. I personally want to see to it that those who have misused our money, the people's money, really go to jail because we need to send a message to all of the corrupt officials throughout our country that if you want to do this, bahala kayo sa buhay nyo pero makukulong kayo at mapaparusahan kayo. I have always been a believer in the saying that it's the certainty of punishment that stops criminals. It's not the severity. Kahit na maglagay pa tayo ng milyon-milyones na death penalty, kung hindi naman natin naayusin yung ating sistema ng hustisya at lusot-lusot sila palagi, walang mangyayari dyan. Ang kailangan natin ayusin yung mismo sistema para sigurado silang mapaparusahan at makukulong. Thank you.
Okay, marami pang dumarating na questions. Siguro itanong na natin kay Atty Chel. Konting oras na lang, mga kaibigan. From Inday Sahor, Atty Chel, how can we support your campaign? And from Bernie, ang problema sa Pinas, nabibili ang boto. This being the case, syempre, ang mananalo ay yung candidates na marami pera. How do you think we can change the mentality of Filipinos with regard to selling their votes in these coming elections?
Well, first, the question from Inday. Hello, Inday. It's good to hear from you. There are many ways that you could support our campaign. It's not just through donations, although we do have, and I can share with you the links if any of you would like to do that. But aside from donations, if number one, if you have other ways, if you can help us print and circulate our collats or our campaign materials, meron po kaming link na pwedeng ipadala sa inyo. Nandun po yung mga design namin for tarps, posters, t-shirts, etc. na magagamit po ninyo. Another is if you have access or if you own companies that can help us with, say, cell phones, because our people on the ground need communication devices or transportation. Kulang din po kami sa mga sasakyan para sa ating mga volunteers at sa pag-sortie ng mga kandidato. That is also another way of providing support. So in other words, hindi lang naman po cash, pwede rin in kind ang suporta natin. Beyond that, kung meron kayong mga kakilalang mga influential people in local government, or if you know celebrities, influencers online who are willing to have us interviewed, that would be great. If you could help us arrange interviews, for example, with radio and television as well, malaki pong bagay yun. Kasi alam niyo naman na kami ay kulang na kulang sa pera, magastos magastos gawin yung mga bagay na yan, at kailangan namin ng tulong ninyo. I can send in a while, pwede ko pong ipadala sa chat yung aming mga links. Yes, for designs, for donations, and also to sign up. If you have if any of you would like to volunteer for my campaign, I can also include in the chat the link to sign up. I'm very happy to say that we now have, if I'm not mistaken, around 14,000 volunteers, many of them young people who have already signed up for my campaign.
Okay.
So,
So,
Chel, I'm sorry, just as a follow-up to the donation link, yung mga kami bang mga well, foreigners na ngayon, although we're dual citizens, many of us are, kasi bawal daw mag-donate kasi yung mga mga hindi Pilipino, hindi na Pilipino.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And that I was about to mention that as well, that we only accept donations from Filipino citizens.
Right.
Well, that would include, of course, those who are dual citizens. We want to avoid any issues, baka sabihin pa ng kabila na kami ay tumatanggap sa mga foreigner. Right now, under the decisions of the Supreme Court, the period for reporting campaign donations has not yet started. Kasi ang simula po niyan ay during the official campaign period, which begins on February 8, 2021. But nonetheless, we want to avoid any issues. So even now, we do not accept donations from foreigners. Kung pupunta po kayo sa link namin for donations, meron pong nakalagay din doon na you have to be a Filipino citizen in order to donate. As far as campaigning is concerned, it's very strange, but the Supreme Court, in a decision handed down several years ago, said that candidates for purposes of campaigning are not yet covered by the rules on campaigning until the official campaign period starts on 2022. Ibig sabihin ay there's no such thing as premature campaigning anymore. I don't personally agree with that decision, pero nandun siya, and that's the present state of the jurisprudence in our country. So it's a sort of a free-for-all right now. Kaya nga yung mga ibang kandidato, kung mapansin ninyo, hanggang sa pinakasulok ng Pilipinas ay may mga tarps na at kung ano-ano pa. It's because the state of the law here is such that it's like a free-for-all. Ayan po.
okay.
And I think there was a third question about the vote buying.
Yes, the mentality of Filipinos, how can we change that, Atty Chel? Hanggang ngayon ba
yes.
may pag-asa ba tayo dyan?
Well, to me, the long-term solution to vote buying really must be voter education. And one of my proposals that I'd like to happen is that we incorporate as early as basic education, voter education as well as human rights. Because to me, those are two very important values in a democracy. Sana maipasok na natin sa ating mga mag-aaral habang sila ay bata pa, yung kahalagahan ng pagboboto at hindi yung pagbebenta ng boto nila, at pati yung paggalang sa dignidad at sa buhay natin lahat. Short term, I think we need to reach out. We are all influencers in one way or another. I think we should reach out to all the voters we know and get them to understand that their vote matters. That if they accept money, they should realize that they are taking money from a corrupt candidate. Hindi po magbabayad ang kandidato kung hindi siya corrupt. At kung magbabayad siya, ibig sabihin yan, babawiin niya yan pag siya ay nahalal, times 1 million. So kung ang binigay sa botante ay 5,000 pesos, makakasiguro tayo na pag naupo yan, milyon-milyon kundi bilyon pa ang nanakawin ng kandidatong yon. I think we have to get that message across. And I think the best way to deliver that message is to tell voters that the moment you take money, you are ensuring that there will be corruption in our government. And you are ensuring that the quality of life of the ordinary Filipino will definitely go down, because the money that should have gone to us, to the ordinary people, is going to go into their pockets. Tingin ko kailangan lahat na tayo ay maging boses ng voter education for this coming election. Thank you.
Okay, this next question will have to be our last one because we only have a few more minutes before our Attorney Chel has to go, and it's from Nova Reliosa de Leon. Apart from the ICC investigation, what are our other avenues for making Duterte accountable for extrajudicial killings? Or will he be able to get away from that again?
I am personally determined to make sure he does not. Now, other than the ICC, it would be possible to file cases here against him after his term. Kasi po sa ngayon, he enjoys presidential immunity. No criminal cases can be filed against him or even other types of cases for as long as he is the sitting president. The moment he steps down, pwede na po siyang kasuhan sa mga court natin. And I know that there are already plans to file cases against him. So whether it's through the ICC or other ways, tingin ko po ay, well, I am determined, and there are many in the opposition who are determined to make sure there is accountability.
Okay.
Before we end po, if I can, I'll have to close my video for a minute. I'll just access the links so I can put it in their chat.
Go ahead po, Attorney Chel.
Excuse that one.
So I think while Attorney Chel is, I can read out itong shout out from Eri
Yes,
Maestro,
Tita. Maraming mga
Kabayan,
shout out.
Canada, no? Pwede ba yun, Earl?
Yes, let's read the
Oo.
messages and shout outs from the...
Yung shout outs kasi importante ito, and this is from Eri Maestro of One Sambayan, Canada. Shout out lang sa mga Filipino overseas voters to update their addresses if they have changed mailing addresses. Contact your nearest consulate before or on December 3rd. Otherwise, you won't get your ballot through the mail. Okay, so please, in order to be able to vote, make sure that you have the correct current mailing address if you're expecting a ballot to be mailed to you. Thank you for that, Eri.
Thank you, Eri. Wala pang merong message dito. May nabasa ko dito. Great job on TikTok, Attorney Diokno. Hindi na narinig. Mamaya ulitin natin.
Oo. Tsaka meron pa dito from Bernie Consul, whatever happened to the proposed anti-dynasty law? Did this ever pass Congress? I don't think it did. Ano? It was not even, I don't think it was even discussed.
Yes.
Kasi Congress is made up of 60% dynasties. So they will not even take a look at it, I don't think.
Okay. So I think Attorney Diokno sent the link already for his campaign materials sa chat group. Paki-check na lang po.
Okay.
Ayan na po. The three links are on the chat.
Yes, we got it, Attorney Chel. Okay.
At tama po kayo, the anti-dynasty law has not been enacted precisely for the reason that marami mga members ng political dynasty ang naupo sa Kongreso natin.
Okay, so Tita, I think there's a before tayo magtapos, merong hinga natin si Attorney Chel ng general message para dun sa yung continuous exodus ng Filipinos nowadays. Attorney,
Right.
what would be your message actually to our Filipino diaspora on issues pertaining to choosing the right candidates? Kasi nasa ibang bansa na yung ibang Filipino. Paano ba natin ito mahihikaya?
Well, unang-una po, ako'y magpapasalamat ulit sa inyong paanyaya na ako'y maging bahagi nitong forum. Thank you for the opportunity to meet all of you. my message would be that let's do everything we can to spread the word about our next president, that it should be none other than VP Leni Robredo, and our next vice president should be none other than Francis Pangilinan, as well as the senatorial slate that they have chosen. Sana mahikayat natin yung ating mga kababayan na kahit ano pa ang kanilang pananaw sa politika ay pag-isipan nila yung interest ng Pilipinas at yung interest ng mamamayang Pilipino. Dahil ang nakataya sa 2022 ay hindi lang naman yung mga kandidato, kundi yung form of life at way of life nating lahat. We will never be able to address these issues that have been plaguing us under the pandemic and also for decades unless we elect really good leaders who truly love our country and who will serve rather than dictate. Kaya all your efforts are going to be so vital and so crucial to the success of this campaign. I hope one day that I'll get to meet all of you face to face. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Atty Chel Diokno. On that note, Kabayan for Leni and Malaya movement in Toronto would like to thank, of course, our guest, Atty Chel Diokno. Tita Leni.
Attorney Chel, you don't know what this visit of yours with us means to us. So we, in Bisaya, makahinangup. We are here in Canada. We've been here for many years. And nahinangup me to be able to panayam with you, to be able to talk to you and to be able to hear from you and to be able to feel the love that we have for our motherland. So I think ang iniisip kasi namin ngayon is itong Kabayan, we are trying to create an aggregation of many different organizations because we want to unite. We are following the example of the Philippines where, everybody's trying to unite behind one major goal, which is to make sure na si Leni nga and her slate get elected in the Philippines para magkaroon na tayo ng pagbabago. So maraming salamat po sa inyo for coming, and for sharing with us your thoughts and your expectations. Yeah, so we are overwhelmed with gratitude. Marami pong salamat. We'd like to thank our fellow sponsors for joining us tonight. Of course, the people who have come to be with us in this webinar. Thank you very, very much. And we plan to have more of this. So we just want to let you know, and we look forward to having you join us. Chel pala, somebody from UP said na yung joke about your teeth, sabi namin, iboto si Chel para magkaroon ng ngipin ang batas.
Tama. Very well said, Tita.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Tita Leni, for hosting with me. Salamat po sa inyong lahat ng mga nanood na nakibahagi ngayong gabi. Salamat sa kasamahan natin sa Kabayan for Leni, sa Bicol Canada Community Association. You can also visit the Kabayan for Leni Facebook page para sa mga ibang mga aktibidad natin, mga programa in the future. Bago po tayo maghiwa-hiwalay, pwede ho ba tayo magkaroon ng isang photo op para meron tayong souvenir kay Atty Chel?
Okay, lahat po yung mga nagpaki-on na yung mga cameras ninyo. So we can have photo op.
Okay, ready na po ba lahat?
Saglit lang po. Sorry.
Si Atty Chel, I think.
Just a
Okay.
second. Yeah. Sorry, naglalok ko yung internet ko.
Si Elmer Nogra, turn on your camera so that you can be in the picture.
Okay. Rhea?
Okay. Sige po, kukuha ko ng litrato ng 3 beses po ha. Sige, unahin natin. Ready? 1, 2. Okay. Isa pa. 1, 2. Huli. 1, 2. Ayan. Okay. Thank you.
Ayan.
Thank you very much po.
Salamat po, Atty
Thank you.
Chel. Mabuhay
Thank
po
you,
kayo.
Atty Chel.
Paalam po, paalam. Thank you.